Forget everything you think you know about muscle cars. While the world was obsessed with pony cars, Detroit was secretly building something else, monsters hiding in plain sight. Imagine a 2-ton luxury yacht that could humiliate a sports car at a stoplight. These were the full-size muscle cars, the iron fists in velvet gloves. They were elegant, they were comfortable, and they were terrifyingly fast. In this video, we are going to uncover the forgotten giants of the asphalt. You do not want to miss a single one of these legends. Ford officially introduced the 10th generation of the venerable Ford Thunderbird in the year 1989. This launch featured a completely redesigned platform and a much more elegant, sleeker body style. While the company intended this to be a comfortable luxury coupe with no sporty ambitions, Ford's engineers managed to sneak in an interesting performance model that many enthusiasts considered a true muscle car. The Ford Thunderbird Super Coupe. Uniquely, the 232 cubic inch V6 engine featured a supercharger and an intercooler. It utilized a high-tech motor management system that delivered 210 horsepower, which was a respectable figure. Car fans and experts praised the SC for its exceptional handling and braking capabilities. Also, it achieved high top speeds, courtesy of its aerodynamic shape and clever engineering. The 1949 Cadillac was an incredibly important model for the company since it introduced a new design element that effectively sparked the industry trend of big chrome fins. The distinctive raised rear fenders, situated near the rear lights, started a true revolution in American styling during the 1950s. And with the introduction of the new 331 cubic inch V8, the 1949 Cadillac produced 160 horsepower, which was incredibly powerful for the standards of the day. When equipped with a manual transmission, the pillarless Coupe de Ville could accelerate to 60 miles per hour in just 12 seconds. This performance was considered very fast for the late 1940s and effectively transformed this luxury coupe into a muscle machine. The legendary Roadmaster name finally returned to the Buick lineup in the year 1991 after a long 33-year hiatus. It arrived as a freshly styled, luxurious sedan and station wagon model. Structurally, the car was basically the same as other offerings from General Motors in the same full-size class. However, the Roadmaster featured some more upscale luxury options. Also, it possessed one interesting engine choice that effectively turned this comfy cruiser into a muscle car. Buick engineers found a way to install a Corvette LT 350 cubic inch V8 engine into the Roadmaster's engine bay. While the LT1 produced 300 horsepower in the Corvette, in the Buick application, it delivered 260 horsepower. That power output was more than enough to move this large vehicle with authority. Despite the fact that the company never intended the Mercury Grand Marquis to serve as a dedicated performance car, Mercury executives decided to transform it into one. To achieve this, they installed a highly tuned 281 cubic inch V8 engine. This power plant produced 302 horsepower. Furthermore, they added a revised suspension system, a responsive gearbox, and upgraded brakes. All those significant mechanical changes turned this sleepy and comfy sedan into a sharp muscle car. The factory black paint, which was one of just 3 colors available, gave the Mercury Marauder menacing looks and a truly aggressive stance. This aesthetic clearly differentiated it from its more sedate cousins in the lineup. Ultimately, the performance was surprisingly good for such a big, heavy sedan, delivering acceleration times from 0 to 60 miles per hour in around 7 seconds. As the glorious muscle car era came to an unfortunate end, Chevrolet decided to discontinue the iconic Chevy Impala SS, only to resurrect it in 1994 as a high-performance option on the 7th generation of this legendary model lineup. Since the early 1990s marked the industry's return to performance vehicles, Chevrolet installed the famous 350 cubic inch LT 1V8 engine in this massive full-size rear-wheel drive sedan. Then, the engineers equipped it with a heavy-duty suspension and upgraded components, creating a true modern-day muscle legend. The powerful engine delivered 260 horsepower and propelled the big sedan to 0 to 60 miles per hour, times of just 7 seconds. Although these are not exactly spectacular numbers by today's standards, for the mid-1990s, those were quite good results. Even though Oldsmobile effectively started the muscle car segment, the brand was not truly active in that high-performance market until the year 1961. This was the specific time when the rest of Detroit's major manufacturers began introducing more powerful models, gaining respect on the streets and on the drag strips. Oldsmobile executives saw the potential in this trend and introduced the Starfire, its top-of-the-line model, which featured a massive engine borrowed from the bigger models in the lineup. While all big Oldsmobiles used a 394 cubic inch V8 with ratings of 325 horsepower, the Starfire was different. In the Starfire, the engine delivered 330 horsepower and gave the 1961 model some serious performance credentials. These models were not considered true muscle cars, since they were designed more as luxury machines. However, they still possessed the raw power, driving performance, and aggressive looks. In the year 1983, Chevrolet decided to reintroduce the legendary SS trim level on their 1983 models. This specific option continued until 1988, with great market success. The mid-1980s Chevy Monte Carlo SS was undoubtedly one of the coolest two-door coupes of that specific period, although the actual driving performance was not particularly exhilarating. Under the hood sat a 305 cubic inch V8 engine. It produced just 180 horsepower and was mated to a relatively slow-shifting automatic transmission. However, what the Chevy Monte Carlo SS lacked in raw straight-line performance, it contributed with its aggressive looks and street reputation. During its successful 5-year production run, Chevrolet built over 180,000 of those sleek coupes. Domestic car buyers were quite surprised when Pontiac decided to introduce an interesting 2+2 package for its popular luxury coupe in the year 1986. This model represented a type of muscle car that the company had severely lacked in its lineup since the late 1960s. It was definitely a visually interesting version of a rather boring car that the Pontiac Grand Prix had become during the 1980s. Structurally, it was very similar to the famous Chevy Monte Carlo SS Aero Coupe. The Pontiac Grand Prix 2+2 used the exact same platform. The distinctive rear glass and the large rear spoiler intended specifically for NASCAR races. Unfortunately, Pontiac did not provide the 2+2 with an exciting performance for street use. This was because all cars came equipped with a small 305 cubic inch V8 engine producing just 165 horsepower. The fastest and most powerful American production model for the year 1955, and the car that truly shook the automotive scene, was the mighty Chrysler C300. The car actually got its name from the output of its 331 cubic inch Hemi V8 engine. Engineers equipped this unit with an 8.5-to-1 compression ratio. Furthermore, Chrysler added a race camshaft and twin 4-barrel carburetors to produce 300 horsepower, which was considered a magical figure for the mid-50s era. The performance was outstanding, delivering 9 seconds 0 to 60 miles per hour acceleration times and 130 miles per hour top speeds. Although the car was expensive and full of luxury items, it proved remarkably successful in racing, winning 37 stock car events. In the early 1960s, Detroit automakers were aware of luxury Gran Turismo European coupes coming to America and selling in significant numbers. Performance-oriented buyers simply did not want big, heavy domestic coupes. This is because they had the power, but did not provide the sharp handling or the driving feel of a sports car. Instead, they turned to Ferraris, Maseratis, and Jaguars for that performance car excitement and prestige. GM decided to capitalize on this trend by introducing a new luxury model with great styling, a cool name, and enough power to put all those European coupes to shame. So, in 1963, they presented the Buick Riviera. It immediately became one of the most interesting cars on the American market. A combination of sleek, elegant styling, a modern interior, and the powerful Buick nailhead engine made the Riviera an instant bestseller. It was also the first real competitor to the famous Ford Thunderbird. But Buick wanted more, so the company introduced the legendary Riviera Grand Sport, or GS, in 1965. The car featured a revised suspension, a bigger 425 cubic inch V8 engine, and a host of other performance upgrades. In this version, the Riviera was a true world-class automobile, with 360 horsepower and acceleration times of 7.9 seconds. This was better than most of the sports cars of the period. The Riviera as a model stayed in production until 1993, but the first 3 generations, especially the GS models, remained the most sought after as some of the best full-size muscle cars Detroit ever produced. Back in the late 1960s, Chevrolet's product planners decided to enter the personal luxury segment with a new model. Since Chevrolet was famous as a mid-priced car brand, moving up the automotive ladder was a big deal. Chevy executives knew that they needed a fresh design, name, and powerful engine. So, in 1970, they presented the Chevrolet Monte Carlo. Chevy built it on the modified Chevy Chevelle platform. The Monte Carlo was a handsome coupe-only car with V8 engines, a nice interior, and decent performance. Although most Monte Carlos came with small V8 engines, there was one crazy muscle option in the form of the SS 454 package. This version was a true full-size muscle beast with a monstrous 454 cubic inch V8 engine. It pumped 360 horsepower and propelled the heavy Monte Carlo to amazing 0 to 60 miles per hour times. For just $420 above the base price, buyers could get this trim level to transform this coupe from a lazy cruiser to a quarter-mile beast. However, only around 3,800 people decided to do that, so the Monte Carlo SS 454 remains one of the rarest luxury muscle cars they ever produced. The reason is that Chevrolet had a few muscle cars in their model lineup already. So, most car enthusiasts turned to the Chevy Chevelle, Chevy Camaro, or Corvette for performance and looks. The typical Monte Carlo buyers preferred comfort and luxury. So, the SS 454 option fell somewhere in the middle, contributing to the low sales numbers. Despite being an economy brand for the Chrysler Corporation, Plymouth had a surprisingly large number of muscle cars during the 1960s and 1970s. Their luxury muscle car was the Plymouth GTX, but in 1970, the Fury GT debuted as the biggest model on offer. The Fury GT was a 2-door coupe version of the Fury sedan, but in GT guise, it was a full-size muscle car with a perfect combination of looks and power. Under the hood sat a well-known 440 cubic inch V8 with a 3-carburetor setup, producing 375 horsepower. Buyers could choose between the 727 TorqueFlite automatic and the 4-speed manual. However, despite the power and looks, the Fury GT was not a big performer since it was still a heavy car. Combined with a relatively high price tag, it proved to be a slow seller. So, after just 1 year in production, Plymouth discontinued the GT model. In the mid-60s, the Pontiac GTO was the car to have since it was on the forefront of the exciting new muscle car movement. With its performance, powerful engine, and great Pontiac styling, the Pontiac GTO was the perfect car for the moment. But it was not the only stellar performance machine coming from Pontiac. In 1965, there was another pure muscle car icon in the form of the Catalina 2+2. Behind this strange name hides a full-size Catalina model available as a coupe or a convertible, but with a performance twist. The regular Catalina was a great-looking, decent-selling model. However, in 2+2 form, it transformed into a true Gran Turismo, with a luxury interior and fire-breathing engine. Since the Catalina was a full-size model, it was eligible for engines over 400 cubic inches in displacement, according to the GM rules of the time. This meant that the Catalina 2+2 came with the famous 421 cubic inch V8. But, if you wanted, you could get the tri-power intake system like on the Pontiac GTO. This boosted your car's power to 376 horsepower. Car buyers could also order limited slip differentials, heavy-duty steering, and brakes. This made the Catalina 2+2 well-appointed, but expensive too. The top of the line, 2+2, cost over $4,000. This was a hefty sum, and much more than the similarly equipped Pontiac GTO, for example. However, Pontiac produced around 11,000 of these fine machines in 1965, but only around 200 convertibles. Everybody knows about the legendary Chrysler 300 letter cars. They were a series of high-powered coupes and convertibles Chrysler built from 1955 to 1965. Chrysler called them letter cars, since they marked each model year with a letter starting with C and finishing with L in 1965. With low production numbers, bespoke interiors, leather upholstery, and powerful engines, the letter cars were true Gran Turismo coupes of their era. However, when production stopped in 1965, everybody thought that a true 300 series car would never be available again. But in 1970, they produced a special limited edition Chrysler 300 Hurst. Chrysler built just 500 with the help of the famous transmission company, Hurst. The Hurst featured a special white and gold paint job. It also had a similarly styled interior and rear spoiler integrated into the rear deck lid. Under the hood was a mighty 440 cubic inch V8 engine with 395 horsepower that could propel the 2-ton beast to respectful acceleration times. They offered this model for 1 year only, so people soon forgot it. But true Mopar aficionados will always remember those gold and white behemoths with Hurst emblems. And dedicated Chrysler historians place this special version as a continuation of the letter cars lineup. The legendary Supersport, or SS, holds a unique place in muscle car history as the model that effectively brought high performance to the American public. It was truly one of the first affordable yet incredibly fast automobiles available. The story began when Chevrolet decided to transform its massive 409 truck engine for passenger car use. They discovered this unit was so powerful that it could outrun almost any other car on the road. With specific modifications, this engine produced 409 horsepower. This power propelled the Chevy Impala from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 6 seconds flat, which was strictly Corvette territory at the time. Consequently, Chevrolet introduced the SS package mid-year, featuring bucket seats and specific sporty trim. Standard equipment included the 348 cubic inch V8 delivering 350 horsepower. However, the ultimate option was the 409 cubic inch V8, which produced 409 horsepower with the dual quad intake system. Despite selling millions of cars, Chevrolet only produced 456 Chevy Impala SS models that inaugural year. Of those, only 142 came equipped with the mighty 409 engine. This scarcity launched the SS legacy. From 1961 to 1969, the Chevy Impala SS offered the largest, most powerful engines, effectively transforming a standard family cruiser into a fire-breathing, full-size muscle car. Mustangs and Thunderbirds were the most famous, recognizable Fords of the 60s, so the Ford 7-liter is a forgotten luxury muscle model. In fact, most people are not even aware of its existence, but this is an interesting, powerful car. Unfortunately, it has a short history. The story starts in the mid-60s, when Ford introduced a new engine with 428 cubic inch V8 displacement, an evolution of their venerable FE block. They designed this engine to be a powerful street engine with lots of horsepower and torque. At the same time, Chevrolet had a successful Chevy Impala SS 427 model, so Ford wanted to compete with it. But Ford had a different vision. If Chevrolet produced the Chevy Impala SS as a mundane car, Ford would produce its model as an upscale coupe or convertible with an emphasis on luxury and exclusivity. So, using a full-size Ford Galaxy two-door hardtop or convertible platform, Ford introduced a new model for 1966. They called the 7-liter. The 7 stood for displacement, and the liter spelling gave more European charm to the otherwise ordinary Ford Galaxy. Under the hood was the 428 cubic inch V8, with respectable 345 horsepower, which delivered a convincing performance. However, the 7-liter's equipment was also interesting, since Ford put everything they had into this car. Buyers could get air conditioning, and bucket seats were standard. There was also a heavy-duty suspension, power everything, a choice of special colors, and the 7-liter badges on the sides to identify this model. This was a one-year-only model, so in 1967, the 428 was back, but only as an option on the Ford Galaxy. In muscle car history, the 7-liter was forgotten for quite a while. But, in recent years, its popularity has grown. So now, these big coupes and convertibles are of high value on the classic car market. In 1966, they produced a little over 11,000 7-liters, so it can be hard to find one. Buick introduced the Wildcat in 1962. It was one of the first personal luxury coupes featuring a performance-tuned engine and other go-fast options. Since it was a Buick product, they guaranteed their luxury appointments and upscale options. Even before the Buick Riviera GS or the start of the muscle car craze, Buick noticed there was a market for full-size coupes with the performance of a sports car. Young, successful people wanted an upscale product that looked expensive, but they also wanted enough power and driving dynamics to make driving fun. In those days, luxury coupes like Thunderbirds or Eldorados were all big, heavy cruisers with soft handling. That is why Buick introduced the Wildcat. Available as a regular 4-door hardtop, 2-door coupe or convertible, the Wildcat was a separate model. Under the hood was a powerful V8 from the top of Buick's engine lineup. One popular year was 1967, when they offered the Wildcat with the mighty 430 cubic-inch V8 engine producing 360 horsepower. This kind of power in an unassuming sedan or coupe was unheard of at the time. The Wildcat provided great performance, but also exclusivity to the owners. Back in the 60s, Pontiac was GM's performance brand, so it is no coincidence when Pontiac conceived the Pontiac GTO. The allure of powerful engines and aggressive design was Pontiac's trademark, but the management wanted to widen its appeal and go beyond regular muscle cars like the Pontiac GTO and the Pontiac Firebird. To enter the world of luxury muscle cars, Pontiac had a perfect candidate in form of the Pontiac Grand Prix. The Grand Prix was a personal luxury coupe they introduced in 1962 in a coupe body style. It also came with powerful engines and a long list of options. They put this model against the Ford Thunderbird and Oldsmobile 98 as a so-called gentleman's express. However, with the restyling of the Grand Prix for 1969 model year, there was a chance to introduce trim packages to transform this comfy cruiser into a real muscle car. And Pontiac jumped at the opportunity. First, there was a new design with a long hood and short rear end and a driver-oriented dashboard. The 1969 Grand Prix stood apart from its competitors, so sales immediately jumped. Second, there was a trim option called the SJ, featuring a high-output 428 cubic-inch V8. It delivered 390 horsepower and a host of other performance options. Pontiac borrowed the moniker SJ from the legendary Duesenberg brand. The SJ insignia was on the most powerful Duesenberg cars, so Pontiac wanted to get a piece of that legend with the Grand Prix SJ. The automotive press and car fans received this luxury muscle car well, so the Grand Prix sold in large numbers. The powerful V8 propelled this big coupe to some respectable acceleration times. Although Pontiac conceived it as an executive transport, the Grand Prix SJ was a respectable street machine. Today, the Mercury brand is defunct as a cost-cutting measure Ford made, but back in the 60s, it was a well-respected luxury division, above the working-class Fords and just below the patrician Lincolns. With Cougars and Cyclones, Mercury was well into the muscle car segment. However, luxury performance models were scarce until 1969 when they introduced a new generation of the Marauder. Mercury envisioned it as a luxury coupe. The Marauder had a fresh design with some interesting features like concealed headlights, a massive front end, and a sloping rear end with concave rear glass. It was a big, heavy car they intended for cruising rather than street racing. However, Mercury needed something to fight the Pontiac Grand Prix and Buick Skylark GS 350. They knew they needed to upgrade the Marauder to higher spec if they wanted a piece of the action. So, they presented the Marauder X100. Behind the strange name was a regular 1969 Marauder. However, it came with a 429 cubic inch V8 engine, delivering 360 horsepower and a heavy-duty suspension. It also had bucket seats, blackout rear trim, and fender skirts. The performance was respectable, but it was still a large, weighty car, so compared to some bare-bones smaller, lighter muscle models, it was significantly slower. The Marauder line was relatively popular, but the X100 didn't become a bestseller, and in its 2 years of production, Mercury made just over 8,000 of them. So, have you found your favorite from this list of the best full-size classic muscle cars Detroit ever produced? Which one would you choose to cruise the boulevard? Please let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more automotive history. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again in the next video.